Greetings, students. This week, we're going to look at the concept of accepting personal responsibility, as well as adopting a creator mindset and using creator language. So yes, we have a mantra for this week. You can see it on the screen in yellow. I accept responsibility for creating my life as I want it. So you can say that mantra all week. Heck, say it all year, every year. Because responsibility, after all, is power, and we all like the idea of having power over our lives. Okay, so I'd like to start today's discussion with the term mindsets, and I'd like to ask you to brainstorm, what is a mindset? And as you can see at the bottom, I have given you a definition, and all a mindset is a collection of beliefs and attitudes. You can kind of think of it like a lens or a pair of glasses, and in the same way, it affects the way you see everything. It affects the way you see a situation, and it influences your resulting choices and decisions. So it's basically the same idea of my having a stack of, 10 different pairs of prescription glasses right here in front of me, and I literally test each one. And every time I put on a different pair of glasses, I'm going to see the world a different way. I'm going to see myself, other people, the world, situations. I'm going to see them differently. So a mindset works basically the exact same way. Depending on which mindset we have, it's obviously going to affect the way we see things. So we're going to focus today on two main mindsets, and you can see the one on the left in blue-green, that's the victim mindset, and the one on the right in orange-yellow, that's the creator mindsets. So we're going to put on actually two different pairs of glasses, and we're going to see what we see through each of those lenses. So first off, let's put on those victim glasses, let's put on the victim mindset, and what do we see? Well, a victim mindset actually keeps us from seeing and from acting on choices that are actually going to help us achieve the life that we want. So I kind of want to take these glasses off. I don't like that view. I don't like those results. So instead, I'm going to put on my creator glasses and my creator mindset. And now what do I see? Right? So a creator mindset causes us actually to see all sorts of options, like multiple options, and then we kind of weigh the pros and cons of the different options. We choose wisely among those choices, and then we actually take concrete steps, concrete actions to create the life that we want, right? So it's obvious that we like these glasses a lot better because these glasses mean that as a creator, we pretty much accept the notion that we're responsible for pretty much everything that happens in our lives. Pretty much everything that happens in our lives. Okay, hold up. We are responsible for everything that happens in our lives. You're probably thinking to yourself, right? Like, well, what about like natural disasters like, hurricanes and floods and fires? And what about accidents? And what about horrible events like murders and wars and assaults, rapings, muggings? These are horribly depressing topics, but it's true. People are abused, people are kidnapped, people are oppressed and enslaved and marginalized and all of these horrible terms, right? And so, Dr. Bean, are you telling me that these people are responsible for what happened in their lives? And of course, guys, the answer is no. These people truly are victims, right? The events that happened to them were not in their control. So you're probably sitting there, Dr. Bean, aren't you being a little contradictory here, right? You just said that we're pretty much responsible for everything, and now you're saying, no, there are cases where people are not responsible. And so, no, I'm not being contradictory, right? First, remember I said we are responsible for pretty much everything that happens in our lives. But this also shows us that we need to differentiate between two different kinds of victims. And once I explain that, I think you'll see that while there are some things that we're not responsible for, the vast majority of things in our life we actually are responsible for. So we really do need to talk about these two different kinds of victims. So here on the screen, you can see it. We have victims with a little v, right? A lowercase v. And then we have victims with a capital V, a big V. And they actually mean two different things. They have two different definitions, even though it's the same word, okay? So victim with a little v, a lowercase v, means that you or a person has been affected by forces outside of your control, their control, right? Exactly like what we just described a minute ago with, natural hazards and wars and rapes and so forth, right? But victim with a big V or a capital V means that a person or that you allow whatever situation that has happened to you ruin your life or dominate your life. It's the idea that even though you're a victim, you have now victimized yourself. You've kind of become your own oppressor. So here are some examples, right, guys? This is actually from out in the West, in the California, the wildfires that have gone on for several years, right? And so, somebody's house that gets destroyed in one of those fires, they're certainly victims. But if they then allow it to ruin their life, that they can't go to work, that they can't raise their children, and there's this downward spiral, they have become their own victim, and that's with a capital V. Now, another case that you might think of, people enter into romantic relationships, whether it's, partnerships, husband, wife, significant other, whatever you want to call it. But let's say one of those partners, one of those members cheats on the other one and breaks all the trust and ruins the marriage, ruins the relationship. And yes, that person has become a victim of that situation. But if they then allow it to ruin their life, they badmouth that person to everybody that they know and their own children. They ruin the relationship with the children and with that other person. They can never get into a healthy relationship again, that they're bitter and sour and that they take it out on anybody who is in a healthy relationship. They have become a victim themselves. And we can think of just so many cases, guys. You think of somebody getting mentally and physically abused, period, but especially as a child. It's a horrible thing to have happen. It's just, you can't even get your head around it, but they are victims. But then they cannot allow it to ruin their life, that they never rise to expectations, that they don't go after dreams and goals and get educated and have their career, that they don't treat their children with the respect and love that they deserve, that they never have healthy connections with other people. Then they have become a victim with a capital V. Now, I'd like to actually share an example with you of one of the billions of stories of somebody who was a victim with a little v, but didn't become a victim with a big V. And this is just one case out of, you can think of people that you personally know. And the young lady's name's Malala. I won't even begin to pronounce her last name because I don't want to destroy it. But she is and was a young woman from Pakistan, and she was actually born into a family of educators, basically teachers, right? And you could even say educational activists. And one day she was on a bus headed home after school after taking an exam, and she and two of her classmates, two other young ladies, were shot in the head by a Pakistani Taliban gunman. It was basically it was an assassination attempt. And so I do want to clarify here, it was a member of the Taliban that shot her. It wasn't just, ordinary religious people. This is an extremist. This was an extremist group who didn't think that girls, women, children have a right to education. But she was shot in the head with a bullet, and she was unconscious. She was in critical condition. So there is no question in the world that this young woman was a victim of forces outside of her control, victim with a little v. But as you probably know and have heard and read and seen her, after her recovery, she became an incredibly prominent activist for the right to education. She's written books. She has her own nonprofit organization. She's the youngest ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize for this, struggle against suppression of children, of women, of young people to education. So the idea here, guys, is she could have become a victim with a capital V. She could have retreated. She could have fallen into depression. She could have hidden from the world. She could have hidden from her family. Why me? Why me? But no, she refused to be oppressed by what happened. And she actually used it as a call to action. It became her purpose and her mission. And you may look at this young woman and say, well, that's different. She's different. She had this extraordinary event. We do not have to have extraordinary events to rise to the occasion. We can also be victims with a little v who take our control back and become creators. So we all can be a Malala. All right, now let's talk about the word responsibility. And I want to link that word to the two mindsets that we just talked about, the victim and the creator. So when you hear the word responsibility, just like your textbook talks about, it sounds like this really heavy word. And we tend to think of other words related to responsibility like duty and obligation, and it sounds really negative to some people, right? But in reality, responsibility is wonderfully positive. And you can see the definition there on your screen. Please know it. It means the ability to respond wisely each time a decision needs to be made, where each of your choices or each of your decisions is going to move you closer to the results you want, the outcomes and the experiences you want, okay? So when you think of responsibility, it really is the foundation for success. It should be an empowering word, a positive word, not a negative one. So whenever you think of responsibility in the future, I want you to try to not look at it as the weight of the world on your shoulders, as this heavy burden, as this bad thing. But try to look at it as a superpower that you actually have to create the life you want. That's how I see responsibility. That's how creators see responsibility. So now let's get back to this responsibility model on your screen. So the key ingredient, right, of this model is choice or decision. You can see it in purple. And for human beings, we have this very important moment that happens between when we're presented with some kind of a stimulus, you see it on the screen, and what kind of a response we give, right? The results that we get. So in this very critical moment, we have to make a choice. We have to make a decision. And that decision influences, the outcomes and experiences of our lives. So it's all tied in together. So in that very brief moment between when there's a stimulus and when we give a response, we can choose one of two things. We can choose to either be the victim, like on the left in orange, or we can choose to be a creator, like you see on the right in blue. So let's look at what happens. When we respond as a victim, look at what we do. What is our response? We complain, we blame, we make excuses, and then we repeat the same old behaviors that we've always done before that are ineffective, okay? But when we respond as a creator, we don't do that. We pause and we kind of say, well, what are my options? What are my choices? What can I do? And which of these options is actually going to help me create what I want, the life that I want? And then you actually pick the one that's going to work, or pick the one that you think is the best option, and you try it. You take action. You do something. So the biggest difference between responding to life, every situation in life, as a victim or as a creator, is how we choose to use that precious thing called time and energy, right? When we're spending our time and energy and effort blaming and complaining and making excuses, all that time and energy and effort, what happens? Nothing. Little or no improvement. We don't achieve our goals. A lot of times people go down this victim route because in the moment it feels good, right, to claim I'm the victim and everybody else is bad and look what other people did and all these excuses. But that moment is really short-lived because afterward you still don't have the results that you want. Your life hasn't changed. But on the other side, when you're a creator, you're always seeking solutions, you're always taking actions. And what does that lead to? Well, it leads to improvements. You achieve your goals, right? So always remember this, that victims waste their time and energy and effort and they stay stuck. But creators use that same amount of time and energy and effort and their lives actually get